Good evening, baseball fans, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tonight, we've got a ton of baseball to get to. We had an all-star break of our own last week. We have 2 weeks of news to catch up on. Thankfully, most of the league was off during half of that 2 weeks, so not a ton behind, but we do have some catching up to do. We, of course, have the Home Run Derby and All-Star Game to recap. A lot of fun, exciting moments there. Not to brag, but I did call the winner on our Monday show, so I'm going to throw that brag out there really quick. We also, of course, have our live score update. It is Tuesday evening, so every team in baseball is playing, and some exciting happenings. We've got a couple of comebacks, a couple of close games going on for you tonight. We also, of course, have our Who's Hot and Who's Not segment for teams for the past 2 weeks and counting. See who's doing well coming right out of the break and who has maybe cooled off as the temperatures have increased. We then, of course, have our upcoming series to watch for this upcoming weekend. We got some good ones up ahead. As we pass the 100-game mark, we approach the 2/3 mark in the season. A lot of these series are going to become very important down the stretch. And then in the second half of our show, we have, for our minor league spotlight, we are reviewing the MLB draft. A bunch of players will be joining the minor leagues here if they have not already done so. We'll be doing so momentarily. Some great picks, some picks that I really liked. I know Ricky had some picks that he really liked. We're going to talk about that. And then, of course, we have our trade deadline preview segment. We're going to be talking about what some of these teams that are right on the border should do as we approach the deadline. We've got all that and more coming up on the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio. You're ready for all that is sports. To hear about our sponsors, get right to it.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
Welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome back from what I hope was a lovely All-Star break for all of you. A reminder, if you have not done so, to please follow us on all social media platforms, X, TikTok, and YouTube at IE Sports Radio. Also check out the website, iesportsradio.com. And if you are a fan of this show in particular, or one of the hosts, whoever it may be, please head on over to X and follow us as well. You can follow the show page at BP Bulletin _IESR. You can follow Ricky, that guy right there, at Rickinator555, and you can follow yours truly at IESR _DMV. You can also follow Alden, our normal third party who could not make it tonight, at the AZTRL. And you know what, guys? We've got 2 weeks of baseball to catch up on. So without further ado, let's get right into it, starting with the events of this past week being the All-Star break and home run derby. We'll start off with the home run derby, where Cal Raleigh had to kind of claw his way back from being amongst the middle of the pack in the first round to win the derby, which, by the way, that was my pick on Adam Karnick's Monday show. I picked Cal Raleigh to win it all. Not to brag, but, I did pick it. But Alden, what were your thoughts on this derby? Was it fun? Was it good? Do you like are we fans of the format? We kind of discussed this before the derby, but what did you think of this particular competition?
Well, I didn't have Cal Raleigh, but I had Junior Caminero, who was the finalist, so I'll take some credit for that one. I think I just don't. It's no surprise Cal Raleigh won. When you have 15 more homers than the second best guy in the derby, you kind of should win. And I didn't like the fact that you had a tiebreaker with Brent Rooker come down to an inch when we could literally just have him take 3 swings and do it all over again. I've never seen that tiebreaker before, which is very weird. They change the rules every year. I kind of miss the old school way of it, but good for Cal Raleigh. He's a guy that has been incredible this year for the Mariners. If Seattle makes the playoffs, he's probably the MVP in the American League. I think it was good that you had a good mix of entertaining guys, like Caminero is entertaining, O'Neal Cruz is entertaining, Jazz, even though he only hit 3 homers, he's entertaining. So, and even though Acuna couldn't do it, I think that was probably the other disappointing thing, that because of his injury issue at the time, he couldn't do it. And as much as Matt Olson's a good home run hitter, he's not wrong with Acuna. So I've kind of lost luster with the derby. Yes, the guys still do it. It's not the NBA slam dunk contest, but the big names just don't seem to do it that much anymore.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought Chisholm's performance, I actually had to do a double take, make sure, did he get hurt midway through, or was there, what happened there? Because I think the next lowest total, I want to say, I want to say was it Pete Alonso who had 15? Was he the next lowest or something? And but everybody was in the mid to upper teens. Might have been James Wood, I don't exactly recall, but him only hitting 3, I was like, that was weird. But hey, as long as it was fun and it was entertaining, I didn't think Chisholm was gonna win it at any reach, but I thought that was strange. But I'm with you. I kind of miss the old school formats. Just let the guys go up there. They get 10 outs and just let them swing away. It feels rushed almost, kind of, with the timer. And I hate the split screen, where you hit the ball and you've got the view of the ball leaving, the stadium, and before the ball even lands, the next pitch is going. It's like, to me, it's too much. But in any case, it was still entertaining, and congratulations to Cal Raleigh on winning the whole thing. Of course, not to be outdone by that, we had the All-Star game the very next day, which featured most of those same players. Pretty good one. We had to go to a swing off, if I'm getting that terminology correctly, a home run swing off. So Ricky, what did you think of that way of resolving the All-Star game?
Well, it was nice to actually have a competitive game. I think that's what helps the All-Star game of baseball. It's the closest thing to the real product as possible. You don't have to worry about guys not playing defense or kind of taking a little – they may not play as hard, but they're going to play as hard as you could for an exhibition. I got to give the American League a lot of credit. Down 6-0, they find a way to rally to tie the game. If the AL had rallied to win, it would have been the largest comeback in an All-Star game since 1955. So very impressed that they were able to do. I think Rooker hit a home run, and of course Stephen Kwan getting the infield hit off Diaz in the ninth. So I'm watching the game, and I'm like, wait, it's tied. Why? Like, is there going to be nobody's? The AL's out of pitchers. The AL, I think, only had one. I think 2 left at the time. And then they throw up on the graphic, or I think I saw an X. It's like, oh, it's a home run derby swing off tiebreaker. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I was hoping Aroldis Chapman didn't blow it in the bottom of the ninth, which he would usually do. And he actually found a way to get it to extras. I love it. Personally, I think it should replace extra man on second in the regular season because we want to see the stars. We want to see the things. Now, it did kind of reveal that the dirty secrets of the All-Star game, that some people fly home after their 2 at-bats are over, or they're just not there anymore. Because you see Boone and Roberts on the field with Kevin Burkhardt, and you're waiting for like, all right, we're going to send up Judge, Raleigh, and whoever. And the NL's going to send up Otani. And it's like the AL sends up Brent Rooker, Randy Arozarena, and Jonathan Aranda and his 11 home runs. And you're like, what? Huh? And the NL sends up was Kyle Stowers. I think it was supposed to be Suarez, and he got hit with a pitch in the game. So I think it was Stowers, Schwarber, and Alonso, which I could see. And you find out that the day before, the managers picked the guys, and they picked them based on who is going to be in the game at that moment. So that's the one kind of pitfall in this. Like, I wish Judge was in it. I wish Otani was in it. Kyle Schwarber made up for it, but when I watched Schwarber hit Mike, I was like, why wasn't he in the Derby the night before? Like,
why wasn't Schwarber in the Derby? Yeah, I agree with that.
That was one where I'm like, okay, great. It was second I heard that they were going to win, so it wasn't like the NL I didn't think was going to win anyway. Pete Alonso should have been MVP. He had 3-run homer in the actual game, and because he doesn't get to hit in the home run derby, he doesn't win MVP. I thought that was kind of strange. But all in all, I loved it, and I think also the Hank Aaron tribute with all the lights and stuff like that on us celebrating 7/15 on July 15th. I thought baseball did a really incredible job with that.
Yeah, agreed 100%. We've got some comments popping off in the chat room. Larry B excited for baseball. Taryn Rodriguez wishing us an awesome show. Thank you, sir. Larry B saying he enjoyed it, enjoyed it, referencing the All-Star game, and that the swing off was fun. It was a fun way to end things. Let's see. Taryn Rodriguez also agreed, end the game sooner rather than later. No more man on second base. Adam Karnick disagrees. He does not want a swing off for the regular season. So we have a little bit of a divisive opinion there. Also, Adam Karnick would like us to tell the Brewers to stop winning. So we'll work on that as we get later on in the show. Adam, I am sure they will come up in one of our segments coming up here in a moment. But first, of course, it is Tuesday night. So we have our live score update. Every team is playing, and we actually have a couple of finals already. Normally we only have 1 or 2, but it looks like we have 3 games have gone final with a couple more right on the brink here. But let's start with the finals. The Phillies took down the Red Sox today 4-1. Christopher Sanchez with a complete game, 1-run, 12 strikeout performance, a fantastic pitching performance by him. We also had the Marlins continuing their hot streak. They're going to be an interesting team. I think we're going to talk about in one of our future segments about the trade deadline. But they overcame the Padres 4-3. That game just finished up in Miami. We also had the Nationals surprise winner in the competition of who's a better team with the color red. The Nationals defeated the Reds 6-1. A very good all-around performance, although the Nationals did use 5 or 6 pitchers to get to a 6-1 victory, which we both thought was a bit strange, but hey, a win is a win is a win. Some current results: we have the Guardians leading the Orioles 6-3. That one in the top of the 9th. The Guardians trying to wrap that up to complete the second win in a row against the Orioles there. We have the Pirates are defeating the Tigers 8-5. That one also in the top of the ninth. David Bednar on to try to finish that one off. We have the Rays leading the White Sox 4-3. That one in the top of the ninth. So 3 really interesting matches here going into the top of the ninth with chances for the home teams to take victory there. We have the Yankees and the Blue Jays tied at 4. The Blue Jays came back from a 3-0 deficit in this one to tie it up. That one in the top of the 8th. We have a close one, Mets against the Angels. Mets leading 3-2. That one in the bottom of the 7th. The Mets challenging there. They've got 2 on and no out. It looks like actually they just got their first out there of the inning. We've got the Giants beating the Braves 9-0 in the bottom of the 7th there. We've got the Cubs leading the Royals 2-0. That one in the bottom of the 5th. We've got the Rangers and Athletics tied at 1. That one in the bottom of the 6th. And we have the Rockies off to a hot start against the Cardinals, up 6-0. That one in the top of the 4th. Later on this evening, we've got the Astros playing in Phoenix against the Arizona Diamondbacks. We have the Brewers at the Mariners and the Twins and Dodgers capping off the evening. So some great baseball, some really close games we've got today for sure. Now let's move it on to our Who's Hot and Who's Not segment, where we look back at the past technically 2 weeks, but really just over a week with the All-Star break worth of games to see who is hot and who is not across the landscape. And we've got some teams that are pretty dang hot here coming through and out of the All-Star break. But Ricky, lead us off here. Who's hot and who's not for you?
Well, for who's hot, I mean, we have to start with the team that Adam wants us to work our voodoo magic and stop from winning. So that would be the Milwaukee Brewers, who look, I think we both, all of us knew in the regular season, going into the season, that the Brewers were going to be competitive because they always seem to be. They only really make one big free agent acquisition, and that is Jose Quintana, and that was toward the end of spring training. But you look at this Brewer team, and it feels like they've kind of just come out of nowhere and been this strong squad. They got Brandon Woodruff back in that rotation, and he looked good the other day, 6 scoreless innings. Brewers were getting no hit, I think, into the 6th last night by George Kirby and still found a way to win. So Mariners have a bad luck of having pitchers nearly throw no hitters and losing. It happened against the Yankees as well. But Christian Yelich has played well, 27-game on-base streak. He's got 19 home runs, but it's a Brewer team that doesn't hit a lot of homers. In fact, they've got only 3 players in their team with more than 10 homers this year. So they do a lot with the speed, running the bases, pitching, and Pat Murphy's done an incredible job. I mean, you think about getting the most out of the talent available to you. I think Milwaukee's a team that is good. Obviously, they've been chasing down the Cubs, and it's interesting down the stretch what moves get made because the Brewers could do some things. Let's remember they're doing this without Sal Frelick, who's on the IL as well, and he's the guy that can make an impact. So Milwaukee to me is the who's hot, and I think they've been a nice surprise. Who's not? I'm going to try to avoid the New York teams. I'm going to go with the Red Sox. I'm starting to buy low on the Red Sox. I know people were so high, and then you were seeing teams after the break, like all the All-Star break predictions were going to be that they're going to win go to the World Series, and they're the sleeper team. Well, they played 5 games against the Cubs and the Phillies, and they're 1-4. They lost on the catcher's interference last night. They lose today because Bryce Harper steals home on a catcher's interference thing, and Christopher Sanchez, as you mentioned, struck out 12 in a complete game. They're playing the Dodgers this weekend. I think we're going to see the Red Sox, who have had the same record after 100 games each of the last 3 years. This is not the same team. Rowan Anthony struck out 4 times tonight, struck out 4 times the night before. Clearly, the young guys are going to start to field a little bit. Can they get anything behind Crochet? They've found some consistency, but I think a lot of that winning was the Red Sox and was the Rockies and the Nationals. I know they swept Tampa with the last series, but Boston, to me, I got to see more. I know they'll be in it because that's just the American League, but it has not been a good prove-it kind of first 10 out of the break against some opponents that I think are in a higher class than they are.
Boston not off to a good start immediately, although they did take 2 of 3 from the Orioles. So they've Oh wait, no, sorry, that's the Rays. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong team. Disregard that statement, folks. Um, so for my who's hot, obviously, you mentioned the Brewers. They're the clear hot team. I have also been impressed, and I think we talked about them the last week we were live, but I got to bring them up again. I'm still impressed with the Blue Jays. They started this hot streak probably a few weeks ago. They have continued. They've charged all the way up the rankings. They now have a 4-game lead on the Yankees. They have won 5 in a row against the Yankees specifically, and 11 in a row at home, as you mentioned. And here they are. They're clawing back from down 3-0 to have the game tied. Now we're going into the bottom of the 8th, by the way, in that one. But yeah, I think the Blue Jays just continue to get the job done and continue to win games. And the fact that they have a 4-game lead in the division at this stage, I think really impressive. For who's cold, there are a couple of different teams that I was looking at coming out of the break. I think I'm going to go with San Francisco on this one. They've lost 6 in a row. They're now 7 games back behind the Dodgers in the division. They're 3 games behind the Padres, which is not only the second team, the team for them to catch in the division, but the Padres are also the last wild card team in the National League. So they've got a gap has developed there. And honestly, Arizona is not particularly far behind. They're going to get a little bit of a boost from their game tonight against the Braves, which is going to help them out quite a bit, but not exactly what the Giants need. By the way, their run differential down to a +4, as their record is now only 3 games above 500. So Giants not looking great coming out of the break. I also have to mention the Rays here as well. 3-7 in their last 10. Yes, they took 2 of 3 from the Orioles coming out of the All-Star break. Woo, congratulations. They did win tonight, so that's going to help their cause a little bit. But to get swept by the Red Sox, who were a team that was right below you in the division, and to get swept, to get surpassed in the division to where now you are in 4th place, is not a great spot to be in. Thankfully, because it's the American League, they're still in a good position for a wild card. So, but overall, I got to say the Rays not necessarily trending in the right direction. Yes, only 4-6 in their last 10, so not awful, but those 4 have come against the Orioles and the White Sox. So, I don't know. Not looking great for the Rays right now.
By the way, on your Giants front, Rafael Devers started at first base tonight.
Hey,
troll the Red Sox. Went 2 for 4, so you never know. Maybe getting to play some first base is going to help Rafi Devers for sure. And I love what you're saying on the Blue Jays. I think to me, that's a team where they do a good job platooning guys. George Springer has found it again, which is great. And I think I'm going to be real interested to see what they do at the deadline. Mm-hmm. We know Toronto's got a decent system. It's not a great one. But do they go in? Because think of it this way, and that's why I think tonight's so big and the next 2 is so big. If Toronto wins one more game against the Yankees, they win the tiebreaker. Because remember, there's no 162s. If Toronto wins tonight, they turn a 4-game lead into essentially a 6-game lead. And if the Yankees were to lose this one, it basically, I'm not saying the division is over, but Toronto would have to really start collapsing. And they've done in the past. But I think John Schneider's got a good group. When Max Scherzer's your 4 at age 40, and he's not Max, but he still has the grit that Max usually has. So I'm really the Blue Jays, I think, are my buyers. I'm really interested to see, do they actually put all the chips in to try to win this year when they have a really good shot to?
Yeah, I think they should. I think especially when you look at not only the way the division is performing, but the way the whole American League is performing. You look at your main challengers. Yeah, you got the Yankees behind you, but you've kind of taken care of them a good chunk as long as you keep playing the way you've been playing. And now you got to chase down the Tigers, who we kind of discussed before the show, not looking great over their last several games. And then you've got the Astros, and then who else really is there in the American League? I think if you're going to go all in, it reminds me of the Orioles of 2 years ago. A team that nobody thought was going to be performing. And it's like, you look at the rest of the league, it's like, I mean, this might be your shot. I know, there's the whole belief, you build for the long term, but at some point when you have your chance right in front of you, you got to take it, right? I mean, you don't get those opportunities every day. By the way, speaking of, it's appropriate for the who's not, Ralph Calise in the chat room. First of all, he said good evening to us, but secondly, he mentioned Francisco Lindor is 0 for his last 29. Ouch. James Wood of the Nationals is on a similar streak. I think he's 0 for his last 26. Now James Wood is. So couple of all-stars, really cold coming right out of the break there. Oh, and Adam Karnick with an interesting idea. Maybe you do the swing off after the 12th inning. And or
I agree with that.
Pick an inning where it's like, okay, look, we've done this enough. Everybody's used up all of their bullpen arms. This is ridiculous. You put your best home run guys out there and everybody gets 3 shots, or something like that. And of course, Larry B, we didn't do an over-under on how long it would take Larry B to bring up the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. We should start every show with that every time he chimes in. But yeah. Yep. There's your Larry B, your weekly Larry B LA Angels comment. By the way, for those of you wondering, the Angels are currently sitting at 49-51, so a very even 49% winning percentage for them. Now, before we jump into our break, we are going to take a look at the upcoming series to watch for this upcoming weekend. Obviously, we're going to finish out the teams that are currently playing. This is going to be their series for the week. But, of course, we have to look ahead to the weekend, which Ricky already does on our Friday evening show, our Friday main show. But, Ricky, give us a little bit of a preview. Who are your series to watch?
All right, so we've already touched on a couple of these teams, so try to maybe do, because I think Toronto, Detroit, I think it might be the number 1 series on Friday, but we've already touched on them a little bit, so we try to just avoid that for a sec. We already mentioned Boston going to Fenway, hosting the Dodgers this weekend. I'll keep it I'm torn between a couple, mostly the 2 locals. I think have a couple of good ones. Mets are out in San Francisco, take on the Giants. We'll see what the Mets, I think, even though Lindor's been struggling, they got Francisco Alvarez back, and he was hitting in AAA. He's kind of carried it back over to the big leagues. They're going to get Starling Marte back. We'll see what they do with the rotation now that Senga and Minaya are back. Does Clay Holmes go to the bullpen at some point? Do they add a starter? We're going to see. But the Mets will be out west. They actually, I think, have Giants, Padres, Giants their next 3 series. So it's a little bit of a test for the Mets. And then in New York this weekend, it's the Phillies and the Yankees. A classic 2009 World Series rematch. And it's 2 teams kind of in tailing directions. You have a Phillies team that is starting to find it. They obviously have gone through their inconsistencies, but I think they're at a really good spot. They added David Robertson again, which is the 3rd time they've added him to the bullpen. He might have to close because, let's remember, Jose Alvarado cannot pitch in the postseason because of the PED suspension. So they are in desperate need of bullpen help. So I'll be interested to see how Robertson fits. And for the Yankees, I mean, no Max Fried probably in this series, and they're hoping to get Luis Gil back soon. But after winning 2 against the Braves over the weekend, there's still something's missing. Something is still missing. They're a team, maybe they make a deal this weekend to try to get something going on right away because they desperately need it. They have nothing at third base. Anthony Volpe at shortstop is still a liability. But I think this is still a good test. You rarely see the Phillies. Now you see them once every couple of years. Bryce Harper coming to New York is always a good time. I think it could definitely be a good test. Hopefully Zach Wheeler's pitching because right now it looks like
he's got the Sunday match.
So it'll be Wheeler against Rodon, which isn't bad. I think that's a pretty good Sunday matchup. It's not the Sunday night game, which it's the Mets, but I think both New York teams will have some interesting series this weekend for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking down this list and I'm starting to see some series that are going to have some significant playoff implications and some significant trade deadline implications as well. One of those, two teams that are kind of middling, but again, because it's the American League, you can't count them out. The Guardians and the Royals play each other this weekend. I think that's a situation where, both teams, the Guardians, who just finished off the Orioles, which I believe gets them to 500. If they continue to beat up on the Orioles, which they should, and then they come in and they rough up the Royals, not only do they essentially take one of their divisional foes out of the race, but they also might be able to pole vault themselves back into the conversation, which would be critical for a team that basically everybody was saying trade Jose Ramirez like 3 days ago on social media. So I think that would be key. That's going to be a key series, especially for the Guardians. I'm also seeing Padres and Cardinals, another one, two teams fighting for that last wild card spot in the National League. That is also a key one to watch. And then just because I'm glutton for punishment, I'm going to throw it out there. The Rockies visit the Orioles. That's going to be a funny series to watch. Let's see who's worse at baseball right now. Yeah. Also, who's going to be trading harder at the trade deadline? That's probably what that series will amount to. So we're going to go ahead and take our break here. When we come back, we are going to jump into some of that trade deadline preview that we were discussing, and also talk about some MLB draft before we wrap it up with our Around the Diamond segment. Do not go away. You're listening to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go. For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop, including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you. Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We had a couple more comments come in the chat room here. We had Taryn Rodriguez, the Angels always get so close to 500 but can never surpass it. That does feel like it's been the Angels for the past several years running. And then Adam Karnick, Phillies Yankees feels like it could be about as big as an interleague series as you can get. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty close to it among the bigger ones you would have out there for sure, sir. Now moving on to the second half of our show, but first, really quick, we do have a few more finals. The Guardians were able to hold off the Orioles 6-3, so that game is now final. The Pirates were able to hold off the Tigers 8-5. That game has gone final. The Rays held off the White Sox. That game went final 4-3. And a quick update: the Yankees have retaken the lead in the top of the ninth off of a Ben Rice home run, so they now lead 5-4. That one, like I said, in the top of the ninth. I'm sure that is what we see Ricky focused on so intently on his screen. I'd be focused on it too if it was the Orioles. Of course, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. All right, so for our minor league spotlight this week, we're actually going to sub it in here with an MLB draft review. The MLB draft happened after our last show, so we have not really gotten a chance to talk about some of the results here. Eli Willits, high school shortstop, actually, I believe the youngest prospect in the entire draft, went first overall to the Washington Nationals. So congratulations to him. And then we had several other really interesting picks moving on down the line. Ethan Holiday, who was the top consensus prospect in the draft, he went number 4 to the Rockies, the same team that drafted his dad, Matt Holiday. And then the Pirates, with already having Paul Skeens in tow, got another electric pitching prospect in high school pitcher Seth Hernandez. So those among some of the more interesting picks. But Ricky, what were some of the picks that stood out to you, and what were some of the drafts that you really liked?
So to me, the most intriguing pick, and I think one that could have the most impact now, not necessarily the player, but the pick itself, Cade Anderson at 3 to Seattle. I mean, this is a guy that I thought could go number 1. Obviously, the Nats went for the under slot move. Cade's even under slot. I think under slot at the third slot was like $9 million. He gets $8.6 million. So the Mariners get him on an under slot rate. And the reason I say that is because now you look at the Mariners in a buy mode at the trade deadline. You have all this young pitching, and now you just got to argue the best college pitcher in the draft to add to the system. So you could essentially either, I wouldn't say fast track Anderson, but let's say you start him at like high A or double A or whatever. I don't know how that would work. You now can trade him to surplus. So I think for this year's rest of this year, because you have to look at it, when you look at top picks now, like a Chase Burns, like those are guys that can get there pretty quickly. So maybe Anderson's that kind of guy. But I love that Seattle kind of got him as a steal, and he's in, I think, a really great situation. In terms of round 1 draft, the other round 1 picks, I liked Liam Doyle to St. Louis at 5. I thought that was a really, really good pick. I think that's going to help them a lot. I know you'll talk about it, but your Orioles, I thought did a really good job. Ike Irish out of Auburn, getting him at 19, and they had a bunch of picks, so you can't really screw that up. I also really liked Cleveland. I thought Cleveland had a really solid draft. They got Jace Laviolette at 27, which I think could be a steal. Let's remember while Laviolette was down for most of the year, he did try to play in the SEC tournament with an injury, which I thought was incredible that he tried to do. But they got him. They got Aaron Walton in one of their comp picks in round 2, another outfield from Arizona, Nolan Schubert from Oklahoma State. So they loaded up on outfield bats, and we'll see if Cleveland at the deadline tries to do a little bit more. But I really like them. And then Boston getting Kyson Witherspoon out of Oklahoma, could have been one of the better pitchers in the draft. And then Anthony Ianson in the 3rd round, getting him. Mason White, the shortstop, in round 4. These are guys I think everybody really knows in the college landscape and really burst on the stage the last few months of the year. So good job by Craig Breslow's scouting staff out in Boston, as much as it pains me to say that.
Yeah, I really liked what Boston did, especially, like you said, that Ianson pick. Also, I like Kyson Witherspoon that they grabbed in the 1st round. I thought he was a really solid pick. You could tell there was a focus on pitching, and even Marcus Phillips out of Tennessee, a guy maybe not the most refined at the moment, but incredible upside and incredible physical upside too. I mean, the dude's already built like a brick house. If you can hone him in, maybe trim off one or two of the ancillary pitches and get him to focus maybe in on 2 or 3 really good ones, I think they might have grabbed someone really, really strong there with uh, uh, what Boston did. I agree with you on them for sure. Yeah, I mean, I thought there were a lot of really interesting, really good picks. I liked Gage Wood to the Phillies at 26. I thought that was an interesting pick. You know, a guy who obviously got a lot of very positive press after throwing the no-hitter in the College World Series. Somebody who definitely rode a late wave, but he's got a good pitch mix. And look, the Phillies do pitching. They do pitching really well. They develop their pitchers. So I think that's a great spot for him to land, and I think that's a good pick for the Phillies. And I'm mad that he landed here. I am mad because we were discussing this in our little group chat on the day of the draft, but Jamie Arnold to the A's at 11, I thought was an absolute steal and a fantastic pitch by them. I'm still not sure where the A's are going because I think this year a lot of people kind of expected them to surge more than they have done. But so far, that pick especially, I think, you gotta like it. And for a team that I really liked, you mentioned the Red Sox. I already mentioned them, the Phillies, not only getting Gage Wood, but also getting Cade Obermueller from Iowa. They really loaded up on some pitching prospects. And then as much as I don't love sounding like a homer, I do got to give the Orioles credit. I thought they did a really good job. I think there was some initial backlash that they didn't take a pitcher until their 5th pick, which, by the way, was still in the middle of the 2nd round because they just had that many compensatory selections. But no, I thought their first 4 picks, actually, and even their pitching picks, I thought they nailed it as well. The only thing I don't like is that they have failed to reach a deal with their 37th overall pick, Slater DeBrun, who was always a wild card entering the draft. He was one that people talked about a lot. Is he super hard committed to Vanderbilt? Because one of the weird things about the MLB draft, one of the many quirks, which makes it, in my opinion, by far the most fascinating of the professional sports drafts, is that you have these high school players who, even if they're ranked highly, teams might not put them on their board because they're so firmly committed to going to college. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. By all means, if you're committed to going to your college, go to your college. I'm not faulting them for saying that, but it does add this interesting wrinkle. Let's say you have a guy like Slater DeBrun, who I believe was like the 24th ranked prospect. I know a lot of teams didn't have him on their board at all because they thought that he was committed to Vanderbilt and there was no way that they were going to convince him otherwise. There was actually a rumor that the Nationals, after selecting Willits first overall, were thinking that they might get a shot at DeBrun with their next pick, which I believe was 42. It was either 42 or 49 was their next pick. So, but of course, if they hadn't drafted, because they drafted Willits, they would have had the extra money to swing for the fences on a guy like DeBrun. But I do find it interesting at the same time that they took him 37. Clearly, they wouldn't have done that if they didn't have confidence that they could get a deal done, and yet there's no deal done. And there's a lot of rumors that he might still go to Vanderbilt, surpass that pick 37, and then the Orioles get the 38th pick is the way it would work in next year's draft. So that's an interesting one to watch. But overall, yeah, I really liked what the Orioles did. Like the Red Sox, like you mentioned, and I liked the Phillies as well. I thought they did a good job.
Deadline, by the way, for DeBrun to sign is Monday, and it sounds like the Orioles, the slot for that pick is 2.6. I think between all the signings that they have done, they have room to give him, I think, close to like $4 million. So
I think the number I on X was 4.05. Is what somebody did the math based on all of their other savings. That's what they have room to offer him. We'll see if it gets the job done. I mean, $4 million. I mean, I'd take $4 million. Heck, I'd take 3.5. I'll give them the $500,000 discount if they want to take me with the 37th pick. But no, we'll see. I mean, like I said, it's one of those weird quirks of this draft is trying to convince these high schoolers, hey, no, don't go to college, just go straight to the minor leagues. It's fine. It's cool. Here's $4 million to do it. Fascinating. But yes, so that is our MLB draft review. And like Ricky said, very interesting component that it's so close to the trade deadline, because now you get teams who have maybe reloaded on certain positions, and now they're like, okay, well now, like, let's take the Red Sox, for example. If they're buyers, which I'm assuming based on their record and position they will be, they just picked a whole bunch of really good pitchers. Maybe some of their existing pitchers suddenly matter on the trade deadline. That's one to watch for. But speaking of which, let's just get straight into our trade deadline preview. We've discussed kind of on and off different teams that we think should be buyers, should be sellers. That was several weeks ago. Now we have a little bit, not a ton more clarity, but you look out across the landscape, and there are teams that are definitely obvious buyers. The Blue Jays, with their position, they're certainly not selling or trading anyone. To what extent they're going to be buyers could be debatable, but they're certainly not selling. The Yankees, obviously, they're going to do whatever they can do to improve the team at the deadline. I think it's fair to say the same for the Mets. The two New York teams, rarely sellers when they're competitive. Obviously, you've got the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Brewers, and the Cubs, all at the top of the National League. They're going to be looking to improve their teams. And then American League, Detroit's going to look to fill its spots. Houston's going to look to fill its holes in. So I think there are some obvious buyers and then some really obvious sellers. I would say, and you could tell me what you consider the demarcation for teams to be buyers or sellers. I think if you're more than 6 back at this point, or if there are more than 5 teams that you have to pass, that you are probably in the cellar. Now, what if you're exactly 6 games back? Or what if there are 5 teams directly ahead of you? It could go either way. But what are your demarcations that you usually look for, Ricky, when you're thinking, okay, this team's going to be a seller, or maybe this team should buy and try to make a run for it?
I think for me, the markers are, how many races are you in? If you're both for the division and the wild card, you're more inclined to buy. If you are solely chasing a wild card, which has become kind of most obvious in a lot of these circumstances, the 3 AL Central teams, for example, Cleveland, Kansas City, Minnesota, all chasing a wild card spot. I don't really know if there's a path to be aggressive buyers. I know we use now like, buy for the future. And now these sellers tend to buy pieces that they have past this year, which I can't stand that strategy, because it's boring as a baseball fan, because I want trades. I want people to make decisions. And that's why I want them to push the deadline back another 2 weeks. So make these teams make decisions that make hard decisions, because you can be in a position on July 31st where you think you're in it, and then August 8th, you go and lose 5 out of 6, and now you're like, what the hell did we just do? National League, for example, I would say the demarcation line is Cincinnati. And I know Arizona is 5 back, but I'm sorry, if I'm Mike Hazen, I know he doesn't want to sell, and Alden might disagree. They have so many good players that have expiring contracts. You could re-sign them next year in free agency. If you really want to keep them, get people that you need. Eugenio Suarez is going to be the first player to have 35-plus homers that gets dealt at the deadline. Like, that's incredible. So to me, I think that's the line. The teams I'm intrigued by, I guess I'll give one in each. I would say Cleveland. I'm very intrigued what Cleveland does, because they're at the 500 mark. They had that really long losing streak. They bounced back. They're 2.5 back of the Red Sox for the wild card. To me, I don't know how the Guardians sell, but let's look at it this way. Cleveland's always in the business of building sustainable winners. They have a closer, Emmanuel Clase, who has 1 year left and has team options for the next 2 years. And there's so many teams that need bullpen help. You can't tell me you can't get it. Can't get the world for Class A. Just teams have been calling about Stephen Kwan. Teams have been calling about Jose Ramirez. Would you be able to get the farm for Jose Ramirez and really start to build something in Cleveland, especially where it looks like this is Detroit's division? You don't have to fall and really tear it down, but this might be the time in the seller's market to do it. So Cleveland, I'm very intrigued by. And the National League, I'm between St. Louis and Cincinnati, who to be like the intrigued with. I think from a buyer perspective, I'm intrigued by the Reds. They just took 2 or 3 from the Mets. I know they lost tonight, but they're still only 3.5 back. Eventually, Hunter Green's going to come back. You have Nick Lodolo. You have Andrew Abbott. You have a manager in Terry Francona that knows how to win. I would love to see the Reds go for it. St. Louis, I don't know what they're going to do because the Cardinals, to me, look, John Mozeliak is gone at the end of the year. So how much can John Mozeliak really deal when Chaim Bloom is the one taking over? Like, that's a really awkward front office thing. And also you have Nolan Arenado, who normally would be in a good spot, but he controls where he goes. And then you have the money and all that situation. So I think it's just weird in St. Louis. And I think they'll buy or sell. They'll sell softly, but they won't have a hard sell. But they're close enough, but they're getting embarrassed by Colorado. Maybe this week we'll think differently if the Rockies continue to embarrass them.
Yeah, no, I think those are definitely some interesting teams to look at. You mentioned Stephen Kwan. Stephen Kwan was rated by Kylie McDaniel and Jeff Passan as the number 2 most appealing trade target that could be available at the trade deadline, behind Eugenio Suarez, another guy who you brought up. And I think Suarez, and I think, you and I discussed this the last show as well. There's so few really good bats, available on the market, that if you're a team like Arizona has to deal Suarez. Like, they would be fools not to. He's at absolute peak value for the remainder of his career because he's 34. He's in the last year of his contract. You're not going anywhere, especially with Corbin Burns on IL the rest of the year. You're not making, and even if you did manage to go on a miracle run and make the playoffs, you're not going deep. Why not deal Suarez, possibly get a pretty good return for him, and then come back next year with a retooled team and try to come back? So, so my intriguing teams in the American League, I'm looking at, and I don't know why they're speaking to me so hard. I'm looking at the Rays. This is a team that I came into the year in a really strange spot because they're not playing in their home stadium. I think we discussed this at length in our divisional preview, and yet somehow they have a winning record at home. They're 500 on the road. They're not playing bad baseball, and they're not far out of the wild card either. They are only half a game behind the Red Sox. But this is also a team that really likes developing their own guys and, kind of not necessarily hoarding prospects, but managing their prospects versus making big swing for the fences trades. So I don't know how they're going to approach being so close. They honestly might, just keep trying to play steady baseball and see if they can't organically make it, maybe do a minor trade or two. But I'm curious to see how a team that, doesn't typically, make big trades or make big moves, they're certainly not going to trade for anybody with a ridiculously high salary because they just don't manage their payroll that way. But I mean, they are so close. They're so close to the wild card there. And then my National League team, and I talked about them as the teams that are struggling, although it does look like they finished off the Braves tonight. I'm going to go with the Giants. And the reason I'm curious about the Giants is because they've fallen back a little bit in the race, but they're still only 2.5 back. They've already gone out and traded for Rafael Devers. So I think my question for them is, do they make more moves to try to close that gap between them and the Padres, which I mean, the good thing about the Padres being ahead of them is that they're a divisional opponent. I'm sure they're going to play each other, coming down the final 60 games. So in some ways, you kind of control your own destiny a little bit, because if you beat the teams in front of you, well, then you work your way back into the race. And they don't really have they have guys they could offload. They could, deal away Justin Verlander if there's interest in him. They could deal away some of their position players, like, Wilmer Flores is a pending free agent. Mike Yastrzemski is a pending free agent. If teams are really desperate and really come a calling looking for bats, those are two bats that I think could land on the market. Or they, like I said, with the Rays, they could kind of say, we've went out and we made this trade for Devers. He struggled a bit when we got him, but he's starting to get back on track. Let's just kind of, play it out. They also might not be willing to deal away a ton more prospects, since they had to give up quite a bit to get Devers as well. So the Giants are another team who I think could have interesting activity as we get towards the deadline. And of course, I also didn't bring this up, but we've got some very obvious sellers as well. The Orioles, I think, are pretty firmly in that category at this point. The White Sox, not that I think there's really a ton to pick from
Luis
the White
Robert,
Sox.
but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, not really a ton to get there. The Athletics I'm curious about, because they're definitely out of it, but they're also a young team. I could see them dealing some of their older guys, but I mean, they're most of them pretty young. I don't know if there's a ton really to grab there. The Rockies, obviously, there's virtually nothing to get from the Rockies. I think they have that one relief pitcher who's having a good season that might fetch some type of return, but certainly nothing else. And then you've got the Pirates, of course. The conversation's going to be, is Paul Skeens available? Who knows? I don't really think he is. I think it'd be a dumb decision, but somebody like Mitch Keller could be an interesting arm. And then, O'Neal Cruz, with all the drama surrounding him, could he be available in Pittsburgh, especially after the power show he put on at the Home Run Derby and then at the All-Star game? And then the Nationals have a couple of guys you could get. Call me if you've got questions. I can answer them for you. And then, interestingly enough, the Braves, I think you can pretty firmly count them out of it. You're very curious to see who they deal. And then another interesting one I want to talk about really quick, the Marlins, who are still decently far out of it, but they have been one of the hotter teams in baseball over the past month and a half. So really curious to see, maybe they don't buy per se, but maybe they stay the course and they keep themselves competitive for the rest of the year. They're an interesting one to watch as well. Now we are going to jump to our final segment, the Around the Diamond segment, where we talk about whatever is on our mind, whatever's burgeoning in our brains here on this fine Tuesday evening. So, Ricky, kick it off, sir. What is your Around the Diamond topic?
So to answer your question with the Giants, they play the Padres 7 times, all of them in August. So that's going to be interesting for that. Want to give a shout out to the Astros. I know everyone gives them a hard time. They're kind of still, most of those players are moved from the whole trash cans, all that stuff. They've had 17 players on the IL right now, and they still lead the division by 5 games. So, and they just called up their top prospect, Bryce Matthews, who had 2 homers over the weekend. I think against Zach Gallen, I think was his first major league home run. So that's a kid with Jeremy Pena on the IL that Matthews could be a really big boost to that team. I wouldn't sleep on the Astros. I feel bad for Justin Verlander. Still does not have a win. And you talk about a guy that looked like he was the last hope for 300 wins. He's not getting there. So it's sad to kind of see Justin Verlander's career kind of end like this. But to my fun fact of the night, and if Adam's here, he might be able to relate here. So the Cubs obviously beating the Astros 5-0. Starting for the Royals tonight was Rich Hill. Now, Rich Hill, he did okay, 1 earned run over 5 innings. That's not the point. This is his 14th different team that he's pitched with. Now, I threw this out. I asked Mike before the show if he knew this. He said no, so I hope he didn't do any Googling during the last hour or so. Maybe you guys in the chat will know this. Rich Hill has tied the record with this major league pitcher. I will throw one hint. That's the only hint I will give. He has one of those 14 teams. This pitcher has a no-hitter.
No, I'm still not going to get it.
I don't know
Let's
if I
see
should
if
give
anybody in the chat who else has 14. What other pitcher is tied with Rich Hill for 14 teams played? We'll give the chat a few minutes here. But yeah, 14. Real quick, Ricky, while they're chatting, list them off for the fans. Who has Rich Hill played for in his illustrious career?
All right, so let's dive into this. It was Cubs from 05 to 08, Orioles in 09, Red Sox from 10 to 13, or 10 to 12, Cleveland in 13, Angels and Yankees in 14, Red Sox in 15, A's and Dodgers in 16, and he was a Dodger until 2019. 2020 was the Twins, 2021 Rays and the Mets, 2022 the Red Sox again, 2023 Pirates and Padres, Red Sox again, this is in 24. Rich Hill loves the Red Sox, and Kansas City this year. And Taryn does have the right answer. It is Edwin Jackson, former
Edwin
national.
Jackson, yes,
and
the infamous. I remember the infamous 156 pitch no hitter where he walked like 6 guys. I remember that no hitter, that one where everybody was like, "Yay, he did it!" Edwin Jackson, by the way, one of those teams being the Washington Nationals as well. I'll throw that. I'll add that fact in there for you.
Was that his? I gotta look. I'm looking it up now as you cover yours. I think that was his. I feel like Washington. No, Washington was not his last team because I remember him in 17 because they got him when they had a bunch of injuries. He has had, was it Tampa, Cubs, Dodgers, Nats, Tigers, White Sox, Braves, Diamondbacks, A's, Padres, Cardinals, Marlins, Blue Jays, and Orioles.
I don't remember him being on the Orioles, so there you go.
He was an Oriole in the first part of 17. Let me see if I can pull up the transaction.
First part of 17. Man, they must have signed him on a whim to be. Oh, wait. He must have converted. Had he converted to a reliever at that point?
So he signed in April 17. He only appeared in 5 innings with the Orioles. So I guess he maybe either got hurt or got DF or something. Maybe he got DFA'd, and the Nationals picked him up in June.
Amazing. Well, congratulations to Rich Hill, by the way, on continuing his career. I believe he's 45 now. Is that the right number? I think he's definitely well into his 40s. So good for him for continuing to pitch up to that level. My Around the Diamond topic, it's a random stat that I discovered this past week while I was on vacation and just kind of scrolling. So, obviously everybody knows Manny Machado, third baseman for the San Diego Padres, formerly Baltimore Oriole. Now, it makes sense because he's been playing in the league since 2012. So he is entering this is his 13th season, because in 2012 he came up midway through and he had a couple of injury shortened seasons. So really this is his 13th season. But just right before the All-Star break, or maybe right after, he hit his 360th career home run. Now, when you think about home run hitters with at least 300 home runs, Manny Machado is probably not the first name you're going to guess. But alas, that is where he stands. Now, he's also only 33. He came up pretty much right at his 20th birthday. So he's only 33. He's got 8 years left on his deal with the Padres, which puts him at 41 when he's done with his career. Now, the question then burgeons. Maybe he doesn't have 8 years left, but he's probably got 7 or so good playing years left. Let's go with that.
Okay.
He only has to average 20 a year in those 7 years to get to 500 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he can get to that mark pretty easily. The question then begs to me, because then he finishes out the season. Let's say he hits another 10 to 12, gets around the 370 mark. He only needs 230, which would be a little bit over a 30 average if he played 7 years, a little bit under a 30 average if he played 8 more years, to get to 600 home runs, which I did not think that I would have Manny Machado as a possible candidate to join the 600 home run club. However, as long as he stays healthy, which looking at the numbers, he has played at least 150 games he's played at least 135 games in 4 of the past 5 seasons. And that's including this year, which obviously we haven't completed yet. So he'll, barring injury, he will have eclipsed 138 games in his last 5 seasons. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but wouldn't that be something if, you have your list of 600 home run hitters? You got Barry Bonds, you got Babe Ruth, you got Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Alex Rodriguez, Albert Pujols, probably Aaron Judge before all is said and done, and Manny Machado? To me, that would be one of the most random names that you could put on that list. Would be adding Manny Machado to the 600 home run club. Like I said, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think it might be something to watch for the next several years as we get towards the end of his career. 500, I think he can do. I think that's going to be pretty straightforward. Again, barring injury or a massive drop in play. But 600, especially if he keeps getting 30 to 35 here over the next few years, it's going to be a really interesting one to watch. That will do it for tonight's show. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to we had Larry D, we had Ralph, we had Taryn, Adam, and Ryan Francione jumped in a little bit later on, and he kind of agreed with the small cap thing. Only thing that Rockies can offer is a 30-pack of scores for whoever's buying at the deadline. That's probably about right. That is probably about right. But yeah, thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to everybody who listened live. We'll be listening later on in the week. Once again, please make sure to follow us on all social media platforms. And also check out at IE Sports Radio. And also check out our website, iesportsradio.com. There you will find our show pages, our merchandise, our Hall of Fame, our blog, and so much more. Also, once again, shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Jerky that's on a whole other planet. Go to planetjerky.net to get yours today. Also, Seal the Deal Wax Seals, custom wax stamps, perfect for your special occasion. Check them out on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps. Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great but promotes and donates to mental health research. So head on over to their website. Use code IESR to get 15% off your purchase. And of course, if you are a fan of the show, please head on over to X and follow us. You can follow the show itself at BP Bulletin _ISR. You can follow Ricky at Rickinator555, doing all things New York sports. He's having a good time rooting for the Mets and Yankees right now. I am not having a good time rooting for the Nationals and Orioles, but you can follow me at ISR_DMB. All I can say is thank goodness football season is right around the corner, because I'm getting over baseball already. My two teams are combined 30 games below 500, which is no less than the White Sox and the Rockies, but not less than anyone else. And then you've got Alden at the ACTRL following all things Arizona sports. We'll be back next week to talk a ton more baseball, ton more trade deadline news. But for now, it has been Ricky and Mike for the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.